Suspect limpet engaged.
Got my limpets, don't forget your limpets. Gonna scoop up a rock or two. I got a blaster, don't forget your blaster. Dig 'em out when you blow it true. Searching all the skies for an overlap. A carrier will soon be mine. Keeping miles peeled for those empty squares. Pirates are about all the time. A cobra, wanna get a cutter, but this rank, you know. I get the credits, head out to an gallon, right to the top of the class I'll go. Searching all the trees for an overlap, looking for the orangey glow. When the top is full, I'll head out of here, somewhere where the pirates don't know. Check in our look out, mother load is gonna blow. Get back, stay back, these border holes are mine, you know.
And in honor of this special occasion, and as a salute to all my brothers out there in the rings of Baran, that was Commander Tokoso with Motherlode, one of the two mining theme songs we're going to have. That one was playing us in, and we'll have one to play us out as well. We've got something a little special tonight. We've got a chat with my good friend, Down to Earth Astronomy, about fleet carriers, the beta, our thoughts about the whole thing. There's no point in doing a regular Elite Week this week because the entire thing would just be telling you that everyone was talking about nothing but fleet carriers. But I will make one special note for anyone who's hearing this. This weekend is the virtual ECM. Go check it out. There will be a link in the show notes. All weekend, there's going to be stuff going on by our Hutton Truckin' brethren. So go check that out. It's going to be awesome. Without further ado, here is the interview, discussion, whatever, with Down to Earth Astronomy. Hello, and welcome to Elite Week for this week. It's been an interesting week. This is week 1 of beta, and I'm here with my good friend Down to Earth Astronomy, or Astro, or Dave. He's a man of many names. Say hi, Dave.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I just wanted to have a little get together and go over, because you know how I do the Elite Week every week. I sum up the news. At this point, it would basically just be an hour of me repeating. And then this guy said the same thing that everyone else has already said. So I thought instead, I wanted to have you on and let's just talk about our sort of feelings, observations, etc. of week 1 so far of beta.
Sure.
So why don't you give me a little bit of the background of sort of your experiences with the fleet carriers thus far and your thoughts, and we'll just roll from there.
So far, I think most of the functionality I could definitely see being useful, at least the functionality that is there. There's definitely some functionality missing, especially when it comes to something that caters more towards explorers. And there is some rebalancing of numbers, but rebalancing is relatively fast and easy to do. I would be more worried if there was some core mechanic that were just flawed from the get-go. And most of the mechanics I've seen so far looks pretty good, but there is definitely tweaking that needs to be done.
For sure. So as far as, I agree with you 100%. This product is sort of 90% there. And the remaining 10%, much of it is all things that they can fiddle with dials and tune this up a little, tune that down a little, and get it. Yeah, or a lot, yeah. and get it to where it needs to be, though. But I mean, the fiddling of dials is relatively, easy. I always hesitate to say easy in game development terms because I'm talking out my ass. I don't really know how easy, but you would assume that would be the easier portion, at least, of this.
I would think it would, like, everybody's talking about the upkeep, of course, and like actually changing the numbers for the upkeep, I'm pretty sure that would take less programming time than the time spent in meetings deciding what the value should be.
100% I agree. And that really is more sort of the focus, because it's not really a matter of like, oh man, this is so hard to change the upkeep costs. I would think that in this one particular case, I'm fairly confident to say that, yeah, absolutely, changing the upkeep costs would be ridiculously easy. The problem there is they have to sit around a boardroom table and everybody's got different ideas and arguments and balance discussions and whatever, and they've got to decide what the correct number is. So let's dig into that point, you and me, and go head to head. I'll give you my thoughts, you give me yours. Let's talk it out, okay?
Yeah, so you're thinking where I would like it to be rebalanced to, or what do you have in mind?
Sort of, yeah. So I think, 10 million a week is the flat rate for the base cost. I think that, I feel like 1.5 times that is sort of a good amount as an absolute cap. Like, you can't possibly get it more than 25 million a week. And then you figure if your average commander out there, say, omits 2 or 3 services that they don't feel pertain to them, or just to save money, or for whatever reason, they could get it down to under 20 million a week. That's sort of what I'm thinking is a good, it feels about right.
Yeah,
what about you?
I would agree. I mean, before the whole beta was launched, I was expecting it to be that if you really pushed it, you could push it up to the 20-25 mil a week area, because you have to ensure that it's something people can actively pay, even if they're not planning to use the fleet carrier as an income source.
Right.
As the upkeep are right now, you need to make sure that that fleet carrier generates some income, and it will pretty much only do that right now, at least in large quantities, if you set up buy and sell orders. That's the only way that you can make a significant amount of cash with the fleet carriers as they're set up now. They could make other options viable, but it would require some tuning, like prices when you buy ships and modules. Right now, you buy at the same stock price as you do on stations, meaning you would always have to ask a higher price than what's on the stations. Nobody's going to go there. I mean, that means compared to Shinrata Despero, first of all, in Shinrata, you get the 10% discount, but now you're actually paying a premium on the ships. So that would only be if people want to restock on a new ship out in the black for explorers, but how often do people do that?
Well, and you're also limited with your ability to even provide for that, because you can only buy a certain amount of ship packs, and you have a finite capacity, which goes through real quickly when you do that. If I feel like, to be honest with you, I feel like the whole idea of ship packs is more sort of a convenience for people that are closer. As far as the idea of ship packs being used for out in the black, to me, that would require some form of a mechanism where you could sort of mail order, or you could custom order a ship pack. And then even if they did it like Colonia, where it's like, okay, it'll be here in 42 hours or whatever, that would fit more. I don't really see it being in any way viable to say, I'm going to sell ship packs out on the by Beagle Point. It's like, okay, you sold 8. And now it's time to spend the next 4 weeks going back to reload. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So if they wanted to allow people to restock remotely, like away from the construction sites or the administration sites, I think they're called.
Yeah.
Then they could easily do some rebalancing where there would be like a delay similar to what you would have when you did a ship transfer, for instance, right? So say that the distance to the nearest administration center, and then you just get a ship transfer from there.
Mm-hmm.
Out of Ken, if they have to pay for the ship transfer to actually get them out there, then the whole point is kind of lost, because then you would still have to ask a premium for the ships in order for that to be profitable.
For sure.
But just like outright give people 10% reduction in the price, or 20% reduction in the price when they buy them bulk. I mean, a bulk discount would make sense when you buy a lot of modules and ships.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I agree with you. I don't really see that being a viable way to generate income. As far as that's more, I feel that ship pack situation and that module on offer situation for sales, for the vast majority of people. Now, there may be a small subgroup of carrier owners that they play an entirely different game. They're no longer playing sort of the Elite Dangerous that I prefer to play. They're now playing fleet carrier management game 2020. Mm-hmm. And for those people, okay, maybe that's a whole thing. But for me, for my use case of the fleet carrier, I don't ever intend to, quote, generate income or repay the upkeep costs through the use of tariffs. I just don't see that being viable.
No.
But if there is a cost of, say, because I'm going to leave a couple of modules out of my choice of my build, and so if I leave, say, 3 of the 7 essential services out, and I get my cost to 18.9 million a week, or some basic number around 20, I'm perfectly happy to grind out a full day, a full 6-hour to 8-hour session of mining whatever the hot commodity at the time is, to then say, okay, I've set aside $1.5 billion. I've now funded this fleet carrier for the next year. I don't have to think about it. And that's fine. See, there's so many people that are saying any upkeep at all, get it out, get rid of it, cut it out. And for me, I think this whole game is built around a system of balance. And when you have these unprecedented freedoms, as far as like, look, you've never ever before been able to take a space station and plunk it down anywhere you like. You've never before been able to have storage. You've never before been able to have sort of, player-to-player trading, or all of these freedoms. I think they require a balance on the other end. This is not light content. This is heavy duty content. And to say that it comes with a upkeep cost, I understand the reluctance of people saying like, I don't want that. Well, okay, fine. But you're talking about having a floating city in space. Like,
yeah.
You get a lot for that, and it's going to cost something,
Yeah, and talking about cost, because now we have talked before about the whole adding cartography data, and you proposed the idea of adding a data bank. And I've been thinking about it, and there's been some other people I've been reading up what people have in terms of the ideas of a data bank versus having an actual cellular cartography data on the carrier. And there was someone who made a really good point, and that is, if all you get is a data bank, well, if you plan to spend a year or something out the black, you will still have no way to replenish your cash. There'll be no way for you to generate new income to pay for that upkeep. Let's just assume the upkeep is down in the 20 mil a week range, and it's more manageable. But there would have to be a way for explorers to generate hard cash out in the black so that they can be self-sustainable and pay for that upkeep. And pay for the personnel.
Okay, that's a fascinating idea, but I want to stop you short real quick. We'll get back to that, but I want to come back because I never got your answer on the last thing of, I say 25 million is a total cap with, 20 million, say, if you don't completely load. What just real quick, what feels right to you on an upkeep cost before we jump into the next topic?
I think around as an absolute max, I would be okay if they push it to 30 if you want all the bells and whistles. You want like outfitting, shipyard, even on the black market, redemption of it, everything. Pushing that to 30, okay, fair enough. Maybe you should specialize your carrier a little bit more. But what I would also like to see was for them to make it more customizable. They've already done a lot going away from the support ships over to these services. But I would really like to see this being a lot more customizable, a lot more fine-grained. So ideally, like, drop the base cap or the base upkeep from 10 down to 5, or remove it altogether, and then split some of the services up. So instead of just having a shipyard, you can now have a ship sell service, and you can have a ship storage service as separate services. Because, for instance, for me, I'm not interested in setting up ships for sale, but I'm very much interested in being able to store ships and allowing people to store ships on the fleet carrier. Same with the modules. People might be interested in storing modules, and especially explorers might be interested in that. But they might not be interested in actually selling modules on their fleet carrier. So split it up even more and lower the base upkeep. Also make the commodity market a optional service that you don't get as default. That could be an argument why you would lower the base upkeep, so that you get a lot more customizability into how you set up your fleet carriers and exactly what services you offer and what services you don't offer.
I dig it, man. I dig it. I agree with a lot of those points. And on that point, so I mean, I say 25 fully loaded feels about right. You say you could see as much as 30. I think if pushed, you would probably say 25 sounds good to you too. And I think if pushed even slightly, I would say 30 is okay. Like, I think we're sort of in agreement. We're in the same ballpark of like, yeah, this is about the amount. And just real quick, while we're on that subject, can I just say, I think they should totally swap out the shipyard for the player-owned marketplace, because to me, if I spend 5 billion credits to buy a thing that is called a fleet carrier, and then find that it comes custom, or it comes completely stock with the ability to have a marketplace but not carry my fleet, I'm gonna feel like somebody wasn't telling the truth when they sold me something.
Yeah, I agree. I would definitely, I would not complain if they swapped that out and said that the shipyard would be the default and the commodity market would be a optional. I think a lot more people are interested in having the shipyard than the commodity market.
Yeah, just because for those who don't know or haven't played the beta yet, even if you buy 0 ship packs, as I intend to do, just owning the shipyard itself gives you the ability to store 40 of my own personal ships as the owner of the carrier, and all of my friends, squadron mates, or whoever it is that I have it open to, they can store up to 10 of their ships on my carrier. And that weight is not charged against your capacity. So that's actually, to me, I was concerned or worried about that. Like, how are they going to figure that out for capacity? The fact that they said a shipyard has 3,000 capacity, and included in that is it could theoretically be, a billion ships if you had 40 of your own and then enough people with 10 each, and they don't care. They're for gameplay purposes, they're just saying every owner gets 40 ships, every guest gets 10, and we don't count it. That's great.
And I think it's a really important point to make, because there was some confusion when I mentioned it in a video earlier this week, that I said every visitor could store 10 ships, and people thought, okay, so there's 16 landing pads, so there's only 16 visitors that can store. But no, it could be everybody. You could have 16 people dock there. They could all store 10 ships, then they leave, and then 16 new people come and dock, and they store 10 ships, and you can keep doing that until every player in Elite has stored 10 ships on your fleet carrier, and it wouldn't increase the storage capacity use of the ship.
And to be clear, the devs have already stated that fleet carriers are a persistent item that exists across all modes of play against all platforms. So what that means is literally
also platforms.
Yes, that's what I said. All platforms. So
nice.
So I can literally, with my fleet carrier, be in open. A friend of mine can be in a private group. Another friend of mine can be in solo mode, and a complete stranger can be in open on PlayStation 4, and another person in open in Xbox. We are all going to see that carrier. Yep. Now, also, just to be clear, because they said, oh, well, it's limited to 16. Really, you could call it 16 landing pads, or you could call it 16 million landing pads. It's irrelevant. They've already said, the dev said on Lave Radio, that the way that it works is, if for any reason more than 16 people were to be in the same mode and to try to approach the carrier at the same time, the 17th person would just get shunted into a different instance. It doesn't, so it's like, it's really an infinite number of landing pads if you want to be accurate.
So in reality, the number of landing pads is just for show and for scale.
Correct.
To make it feel big.
Yeah, it's to make it be like, wow, look at that. You could just as easily say it's 972 large landing pads if that's how many people you have right now in a large ship across all the different modes and platforms that want to visit, which that's huge, because this is the first time. So players across platforms have always been able to interact indirectly through the BGS.
Yeah.
But in this case, this is the first time where players on different platforms can interact directly, in that I can put a buy order for titanium on my fleet carrier in PC mode, and you, Astro, could fly up in a PS4 mode for whatever reason if you were slumming it, and you could buy it. Like, that's like we could exchange goods and services across modes.
And also for people who are, considering moving from one platform to the other, they will actually now have a viable way to move cash between accounts. Because the fleet carriers can be used for that. They can be used as basically a money mule that just moves cash from one account to the other, if you own it. I mean, one of the accounts needs to be the owner in order for that to work, but that you can do that, which is quite interesting.
You actually don't even have to be one of the accounts be the owner if you have a third party that you trust implicitly. So if, for example, like I know you're not going to rob me. If for some reason I needed, if for some reason though, I was like, damn, I got to get this money to Alec Turner. I bet him, that whatever, I would make a pull shot and I missed a bank shot and now I owe him 1 billion credits. My carrier's nowhere near. Hey, Astro, let me land on your carrier. I'm going to buy 10 items of whatever, value. I'm going to buy them from you at a highly overinflated cost and then sell them back to you. Because you can literally, the plus or minus on that is you can sell for as low as 5% of the galactic average, and you can buy for as much as 1,000% of the galactic average. Using a commodity that has a decent price, if you use something that has, say, 1 million per galactic average, you could literally transfer mass amounts of money very quickly.
10 million almost per transfer.
And I hope,
item.
And they've indicated that they are looking at it, they're watching it, because the concern, like, let's be honest, let's not sugarcoat it. That's not all good. Having that freedom is good in a lot of ways, but it also brings with it the sort of specter of RMT, and they're going to have to watch that, and they're going to have to deal with that.
Yes, and because when it's now so easy to transfer cash between accounts, that opens up for third-party markets and people spending real money buying cash in game, which I don't think is. It wouldn't be the worst for a game like Elite, but it hasn't done anything good to other games, and it sure as hell is not going to do anything good for Elite.
Yeah, I'm 100% against it, but I feel that the freedom that all of the potentially positive things that can come from this freedom outweigh the potentially negative side of the RMT. I feel like the RMT is going to be, 0.5% of the economy, as opposed to legitimate uses are going to lead to a much more varied sort of and a lot of different levels of interactions. I can make a mercenary corp, and then your Terrax, if you're in a situation where it's like, oh crap, we're in a war, these guys are nasty and they've got a lot of friends that they keep calling in, I'm going to go hire Kai's mercenaries. I'm going to pay him, 10 billion up front for a down payment, and then another 10 billion a week later or 2 weeks later when this war is settled. And in that time, I bring 40 pilots and we, get it done.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you could say like, hey, I've got my second account out in Colonia. I'm just going out. I'm a professional. I'm a professional explorer now. I find ringed Earth-like worlds, and then I put a post up in Inara saying contact me, and then someone who wants it, like, okay, yeah, Astro's going to have the first discovered tag, but he didn't map it. He left it. He marked the coordinates, and then he leaves it to you, and you go map it. And then now when bases come out, when base building comes out in the expansion, now you can put your house on your very own little planet that you mapped. You have your name on the planet.
Yeah.
Like maybe that'll be worth something to somebody, and they'll pay money. Like, who knows? There's all kinds of stuff that we haven't even thought of yet that could potentially come from this.
But I'm not too afraid. As I agree that having a third-party market is definitely not something I would like to see in Elite. But if we're gonna be real here, the credits is not really the real currency in Elite. This is not the bottleneck. The bottleneck is engineering materials.
100%.
And that can still not be transferred. Once that's in your account, that stays in your account. You can't jettison it. There's no way to get that out of your account other than spending it as an engineer. So because that material is still so locked down, which in my mind is the quote-unquote real currency in Elite, then I don't see the credit transfer between accounts being that huge of an issue.
I agree. I mean, we don't know though, like, this is a very large asset, which for the first time has really been a stretch for the vast majority of the player base to be able to afford. And coming up in the future, in the future expansion, if base building is a thing, and people have multiple different production facilities, and some of those might have upkeep costs or not, or whatever, like actually, we're getting to the point where people are stretching themselves a little bit for money, and it might become a thing. But I 100% agree with you that right now, the vast majority of the real currency in Elite for anyone who's at endgame level is materials.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let's jump back to that other idea that you were talking about the data core, because I just wanted to get your answer first on how much you thought, was the upkeep cost should be, because that's the number one issue that everybody's just throwing salt at each other about.
Yeah.
So the data core idea.
Yeah, so the whole point with the data core idea versus having full-on cartography on the fleet carrier was that if I decide to say, I want to take a fleet carrier out and I want to go and I want to circumnavigate the galaxy 5 times or something like that, and I want to go and draw the big whatever. Let's say I want to spend 2 years out in the black and not planning to see the inside of a station for those 2 years. If I want to take a fleet carrier with me, I would have to have a way to generate hard cash on my in-game account so that I could use those cash to pay up for the running costs of the fleet carrier. And I can't do that if all I have is a data bank. Then I'm forced to make trips back to sell that from time to time. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but it's a valid point that if you do not have the ability to straight up sell the data, then you are forced to go to stations from time to time to cash in, basically.
No, and I completely agree with that. My envisioning of the use of the data core would be such that having the data core means that you can spend a year out in the black, and you can say, like, you park your let's say you take it somewhere between Sag and Beagle Point, but up or down on the plane, and left or right, so that it's not a direct line, because there's sort of a path where you can see it's almost like a colony of ants just marched in a line from spot A to spot B and back.
Yeah.
But I'm saying go down into the left, go up into the right, whatever. Park your carrier there. Now you live out there for the next, say, year. And what you do is every week you kind of do a loop and explore an area, right? Mm-hmm. You come back, you hit the data core, you save your data. You swap over to a mining ship, you go out and mine a ring, you come back with enough stuff, tritium, to like make your jump. Now you jump it 500 light years, left, right, up, down, whatever. Then again, you keep every week, you make the loop, you save your data, you do that. So that if you die at any point in that year, you haven't lost a year's worth of data, you've just lost that 1 week's worth of data since the last time you quote unquote saved. Or if you're more conservative and you want to save every night before you log off, like whatever. You have as a player just a little bit more tangible control over that risk level, so that if you die to scooping a white dwarf, or die to landing on a high G or something, you've lost some amount of data, but not like a crazy, like, okay, I lost the last 6 months. But yes, implicit within that idea of that system is the need, say, once a month, once every 3 months, once every 6 months, at the player's convenience, whatever works for you. You're going to have to swap out from your little standard explorer ship to more of what I would consider like a slightly armored Jumpaconda type situation. Yeah. And then head back to, in this scenario, you would obviously be heading back to, they have universal cartographics at Explorers Anchorage? I was just there like a week ago. Yeah, they do. They don't have a shipyard, but they do have UC. So yeah, you would head back to Explorers Anchorage, dump off all your sail data, turn around and come back. And the only reason why I offered that as a sort of middle ground is I think there may be a feeling on the behalf of Frontier Developments that piece, that coming back safely with your data, is an integral part of the gameplay loop of exploration.
I've seen that argument too. People have made that argument as well.
Yeah, if they don't want to allow for that to be taken out, well then, okay, that's a middle ground. But where that does not work, where that doesn't do anything to help, are people like the DSSA. They have the idea of they're going to park fleet carriers out in different quadrants all across the galaxy. They're going to be marked on EDSM. They're going to be marked on Anar. They're going to be marked on EDDB.io. Mm-hmm. And then explorers would use them as gas stations, save points, sell points, whatever, refit, up your limpets, do whatever you want to do. And the thought there is that potentially, at least partially, the upkeep costs of those carriers would be paid by all of the travelers that stop through dumping off their UC data, and then the carrier getting, some tariff on that.
Yeah.
So for that group, the idea for the DSSA people, the idea of a data core, let's be honest, it wouldn't help at all. But
no, unless they have dedicated people running around to the carriers picking up data, but who'd be the owner, right? Pick up the data and then go and sell it somewhere.
And that's now you're talking about creating a whole mechanic for how do you transfer sort of the responsibility and ownership of that data. That's, as a developer, I would think that would be a nightmare situation of trying to figure out ownership rights and responsibilities and what happens if somebody dies when they're on their way back and now you're complaining because you lost whatever. That would be gnarly.
Yeah, I agree. But
okay,
if you have I don't know if you have but I really want to come back to the topic of tritium and explorers, because
let's do it.
There's some issues there. There's some fundamental issues there.
Okay.
I've always hated whenever you have a game that has multiple different play styles. That could, like in Elite, you have combat, you have trading, you have people who do anti-casino stuff, you have people who like to mine. There's lots of different things you could do in Elite. Some people like some type of gameplay and some people prefer others, right? Mm-hmm. And I've never liked when a game then forces you into a mode of game or gameplay style that you do not enjoy. For instance, there's always been the talk that you should make mining more dangerous by adding more NPCs that will come after you or something like that. And I've always said, like I don't want to see mining becoming into a combat thing. I might just like to go out and mine for an evening and then just sit there and relax, mine some rocks, come back, sell, cash in for some profit. But with the fleet carriers, as the tritium is right now, you are kind of doing that to explorers. Like people who like to go out, explore, look at pretty planets, map them, go down to the surface, drive around the RSRV, whatever they like to do, are now all of a sudden forced to go out and mine if they want to have a fleet carrier. Because there's no other way they're going to be able to replenish. So I would really like to see another way to replenish fuel that doesn't involve you getting in a mining ship, going into an ice ring, and just begin to mine. It could be it could be a service that you pay for where you have a mining crew on board, and whenever you're parked in a system, or maybe even whenever you're parked around a planet with an ice ring, well, your fuel would slowly replenish on its own. That would mean the explorer would have to plan their jump, so they actually stop at planets with ice rings and activate that service, so they send out the mining crew and they would then replenish some ton per hour that you are sitting there, slowly refueling itself. Something like that. That doesn't mean explorers have to get out in their ships and mine if they don't enjoy it.
You say that, and I'm immediately reminded of my idea before fleet carriers were sort of the details were announced. When we knew that they were coming, I had said that what I would really, really love for them to include is, I don't know if you ever played back in the day, Battletech or the Mech Warrior series, but in the Battletech universe, they had these things called jump ships that were basically fleet carriers. They were a big ship, and from that, a drop ship would land, and from that drop ship, mechs would emerge on planet side. But the jump ships were used to just jump from system to system, and they never entered the atmosphere. And their ships, the way they did it was, you could like use these battery powers, so you could like load up a ship with a ton of battery from a Earth, like from a planet side destination, and bring it back and manually charge it, much like buying tritium from a market and bringing it and dropping it on the ship. But you could also, if you didn't mind waiting, if you didn't mind it taking like 4 days, 5 days to charge up the drive, you could unspool a solar sail, and it would just sit there, and it was a massive, massive sail that would go behind the ship that would just sit there and soak up sunlight. And I thought, man, I would love it if they make it to where like, hey, if you want to mine tritium, or you want to buy it from a location, you could be ready to jump in as quick as 2 hours. But if you don't mind slow boating it, if you're that explorer that I talked about who just moves it to some spot between Beagle Point and Sagay and just spends a week doing loops, you could just unfurl the sail and let it passively collect over the next 2 to 3 days, and then be ready to jump again if you needed to.
Yeah. I think, and again, I agree that the rate that you acquire, or you gather fuel by the automated method should definitely be slower than if you go out and do it yourself. And that fuel would only go into the tritium deposit, because you can't, as far as I know, take tritium out. So you couldn't use it to generate any cash or any income, because you can't take it out and sell it on the market. And when the fuel tank was full, well, they would stop. They wouldn't begin to fill up your cargo hold. So it shouldn't necessarily be a cash generator, because it shouldn't be like a passive generator. That I don't think that would work. Or it would, but I don't think necessarily that would be. I don't think Frontier would do that. It would be bad.
Yeah, it would be bad. It would be poorly conceived.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be, But just having the opportunity to let it sit there and, let's say, over 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, I don't know exactly how long, but it will then fill up the tank for you. So you would now have a full tank, and you are ready to do another another set of jumps. Problem would then be with only 1,000 tons of fuel in the tank. That would leave you with about 1,000 light years of jump range, depending on how much other cargo you have on board. But let's say if you have very little cargo, you can probably get up to 1,500 light years. That's not a lot if you have to go 1,500 light years and then stop for another 2 days. That's going to be really, really slow. So if that was the case, they would do something like that. Either the refill time would have to be within a day, or alternatively, they would have to increase the size of the tritium storage so you could have more fuel with you at any given time. But both could be options. I think the best one would be to just outright expand the fuel storage, because it doesn't make the jump any further. It doesn't make it jump any faster. It just allows you to stockpile more fuel.
I agree. That sounds good. So really, we're talking about, though, just window dressing on a mechanic. So the idea of a solar sail, or the idea of a quote unquote, hired mining crew that works, it's the same mechanic. It's just passive generation of fuel for those who just don't want to mine. And I think you want to still make it slow enough and onerous enough. You want to make it sort of kind of a pain, so that it pushes people who want to get there quicker to mine, but it leaves those who don't want to engage in that at all a possibility to avoid it if they don't mind being on the slow boat.
Exactly. And of course, you always have the option to go buy a station that actually sells tritium and stockpile it into the normal cargo hold, and then just transfer it into the fuel tank as you go along. That is of course an option. So you can stockpile a lot of fuel. But if it were an automated method that would only fill up the deposit, then I would probably recommend that it would be expanded to probably 2,500 or 5,000, so you can get a little bit more range out of the fuel tank. It wouldn't change much.
So while we're on the subject of that, I don't know if you saw it, I posted a little, like, sort of my thought on. Oh yeah, you did, because we talked about it. The fleet carriers. So one of the other issues that I have with the fleet carrier is this, and this is sort of big for me. People talk about, well, the drive time spooling up for an hour and spooling down for an hour. That's ridiculous. That's that's too much. And to get it from here to there would take this long, and you have to do this and the other. Okay. As far as the idea of spooling it up time, I get that for the use case of people that want to use it as a bubble taxi to, like, bring all their stuff and be ready to go, I get that they want it fast. But I've from discussions I've had with regard to this idea from a back end, from a development team viewpoint, there are some headaches there where you're talking about moving a space station across the galaxy or across from one point to another. And those space stations are tied to markets, they're tied to services, they're tied to all kinds of things in ways that we don't sort of see from the front end. But the back end, when they go to move one of these things, they're sort of like, they have to reserve a place. I think it's like 20, I think from the server, sort of the way the server registers, they have to, like, reserve, quote unquote, a place at the new location like 20 minutes in advance. There's like a lot of stuff that we don't see. So for us to go, like, do this, it's easy.
I don't think they reserve it at the moment you initiate the jump, because if they do that, I could initiate a jump to a system and then I could cancel it right away, which I've done to test how much fuel is consumed on a jump, because you can see that before you jump. But I think when you do a jump, there's a 200-second lockdown time. Yeah. Those 200 seconds is not just there for show. I'm pretty sure that is essentially a load screen. That is probably with a very generous margin, but that time is reserved to go in and update all the background stuff, saying, okay, now we're going to take this fleet carrier and we're going to move it out of here and we're going to move it into this system, and this system, where does it go, and is there room for it, is there not room for it, and all that stuff needs to be generated behind the scenes. And those 200 seconds, when you're sitting there and it says phase 2 and it takes forever, that is what's happening behind the scene. And I think that's why that time is there. We could sit and listen to the pretty audio design they've made.
Yeah. Well, that's farther along. That's at the process when it's actually loading it from one to the other. Before that, there is like a 20-minute time limit there or whatever, where they're making a reservation. And the reason for that is because there's limits on how many carriers can be in a system at one time and how many can be in orbit of particular bodies. So what they're doing at that point is sort of making the soft reservation at the 20-minute mark or whatever, and then the load in at that last 400 seconds or 200 seconds or whatever, because
I don't think they do that. I don't think they do it before the 200-second mark, because I tried to jump my carrier back to the system I bought it in that was overpopulated with carriers at the time. And I selected a specific planet and say, I want to jump to this planet. And then it said, okay, fair enough. It locked in and everything looked good. And when the carrier actually jumped, it selected another random planet that was room for in the system. So I don't think they do the soft reserve at the moment you log in your destination. I think they basically just say, well, okay, so you're going to jump now. Let's see what kind of space we can get you. Because if they soft reserve a spot for me and then say there's no room and they soft reserve at another planet and then suddenly someone moves away from the planet I originally wanted to, they need to constantly keep track of, who jumped where and who is actually queuing up for this planet, and that's just a pain. So I think what they're doing, just saying 200 seconds before you jump, we lock everything down, we put this thing into stasis. They also prevent you from going in and doing any changes to the fleet carrier. You can't, you lose access to the management screen in those 200 seconds because everything's just hunkered down and then have to, almost.
You know what that is? That's to avoid any duping or any kind of, you know what I mean? Where like you take something out, but it doesn't register on the server, and then it's still there on the other one, and now you're
at the same time.
Yeah, they're at that point blocking you from a lot of shenanigans.
Yes,
and rightly so. That's smart. They should. But okay, so getting back to my point though. Let's just assume for a moment, if they can change a little the spool up, spool down time, some people will be happy. I'm going to be honest, for me, that's not really a concern. But here is my concern. And here is something that I think is just bad. This is something that needs to be addressed. If I tell my fleet carrier I load up 25,000 tons of fuel in my storage, plus the 1,000 in my tank. And I tell my fleet carrier, go to Colonia. It has more than enough fuel to get from A to B. And I can manage they made a big show of saying I can manage my fleet carrier from anywhere in the galaxy. I paid all of this upkeep cost for a top-notch crew that can do whatever I tell them to, no problem. Until it gets to the second jump, the tank is empty, and then you find out that they have not included any mechanic whatsoever for my specifically hired crew to manage the fuel tank, to take fuel that I have set aside in the storage and just move it into the tank. Yeah. The only way to do that is for me to fly where the ship is, land on the ship, my crack crew of fuel experts put the fuel from the cargo storage bay into my ship. And then from my ship, I have to personally be there to sign the deposit slip like a bank in the 1800s. Yeah. And put my thumbprint in candle wax so that they can take that and put it into the fuel carriage or the fleet carrier's fuel tank.
Yeah.
That's just bad.
Yeah, I would agree. It is pretty dumb that you can jump millions and millions of tons of metal at superluminal speed between solar systems, but you can't get a guy with a forklift to carry a little bit of tritium from one storage to another. I can be at Beagle Point. My fleet carrier can be at Agartha, or at LF or Ross 310. I can tell my carrier through that little handy dandy menu, hey, go fly to Agartha. When you get there, buy ship packs. Load all of these ships onto the carrier somehow, some way. Who knows? Magic. Fire this crew, add that crew, swap this stuff around, buy all this stuff, buy this, sell that. I could do all of that, but we can't put gas in the gas tank? So that actually begs the question, why is there a tritium deposit at all? Why not just take it out of cargo? I don't know.
So the reason for that is that they created a separate mechanic. If you notice, other commanders have no ability to interact with your cargo, but other commanders can deposit into the fuel tank.
Yes,
they needed to rope off that as a separate thing so that it didn't create. This is just me thinking out loud. It could be a different reason, but I think that's why. They couldn't figure out ways to sort of separate access to who can put into cargo and who can put into, as opposed to anyone can deposit to the fuel tank.
Okay, alternative then. What they already have pretty much, like, what they got down is the whole allocating space. So if you go into your management screen, you can see, okay, so this much is allocated for what they call projects, that's your services, and this much is pre-allocated for buy orders that you have. They pre-allocate space already for everything. So why don't you just give me a slider saying I want to allocate a certain percentage of, like, just like you have with the upkeep, where you can allocate a certain percentage of the funds available. I want to have a simple slider where say I want to allocate this this bigger percentage of my cargo to fuel.
Yeah, supplemental fuel. Yeah, absolutely.
And then my tritium deposit or depot would just be the size that I've allocated. And I think one of the reasons why they won't allow people to put directly into the storage is so I don't end up in a situation where people, like, I could see people suddenly trolling you and saying, haha, we're going to dump 20,000 tons of tritium on your carrier, apart from that being a significant amount of money. But all of a sudden, you need to get that out of your carrier again. And then you could basically lock down a carrier, but just keep dumping tritium into it. It would be expensive, but you could, because the guy couldn't set up new buy orders because he wouldn't have room for it. He would have to sit and try and haul out all that. Or, I don't know if you could just jettison it, or I don't know. Can you jettison from it? I don't think you can.
Yes, and you can take out. Can't you take out?
Yeah, okay, I can take it out to my own, and then I can abandon, and then I can destroy it when I'm docking.
Yeah,
I would assume. So yes,
it would be onerous. But here's the thing: my fleet carrier's name is Nibiru, and anyone who wants to prank me with that awesome prank, I will let you know the exact coordinates. You come do that. I'll live with the shame of it.
Okay, hold on. Yeah. How much would that actually be? 20,000. 20,000, let's say you have a bit of services in there, so you have 20,000 tons left, and tritium is what, 40,000 at the test server right now?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why you don't make jokes with people that graduated from the Neil Bohr's Institute.
That's 800 million. Okay, fair enough. If people want to pull that prank, be my guest.
Yes.
Okay.
Prank me. Come at me, bro.
Yeah. Throw 800 million in my cargo hold. That'll pay my upkeep for a while.
So clearly we're both in agreement. You need to be able to do one of two things. Either A, manually allocate supplemental fuel storage from the cargo hold, or B, just tick a box that says that my fuel team has the authority to take whatever fuel is necessary out of cargo and use it to do the jumps that I booked. And then number two, you need the ability to schedule jumps well in advance. I should be able to schedule my fleet carrier to jump from Agartha to Colonia, and so long as there's enough fuel on board, every 2 hours, every hour, it spools up, then it jumps, then the hour cooldown, then the hour spool up. It should, I have a persistent crew. I'm paying these fuckers 25 million a week to get to jumping. You're supposed to be jumping while I'm asleep. You're supposed to be jumping while I'm at work. You're supposed to be jumping while I'm sitting in traffic. You're supposed to be jumping while I'm at the gym or the grocery store. You're supposed to do what I tell you to do. So get jumping. Yeah. If the ability, the lack of ability to schedule anything more than 2 jumps is, to me, an oversight that should be addressed.
Any more than 2 jumps? You can't only schedule 1. Right?
Right now, I thought.
Right now you can only schedule 1 jump at a time.
Yeah, and that I think you should be able to schedule 50 jumps. If you can work out the gas, you should be able to do it.
And you could argue whether it should be basically, they could do 1 or 2 things for that. Either they could just say, well, you can, how do I explain that? You could either just set your waypoints manually saying, jump to this system, then jump to this system, then jump to this system, or they would basically just like cannibalize the already existing jump planner they have implemented into the game and say, I want to jump to that system, and then say, okay, here's a route. It will need this many jumps. It's expecting to be here at this time if you have the fuel. And you could even, like, just as you have with your normal ship, it could like dot out the line saying, hey, at this point, you are running out of fuel. You're going to need to come back here and make sure more fuel is on board.
Or emergent gameplay, maybe a new service pops up that's somewhere between the Fuel Rats and Domino's Pizza. You pay them up for, like, literally, you let them know X carrier is going to be at Y location at Z time. And then they fly out there with their team of haulers that there's a group of people that mine, and then they transfer it to the haulers, and the haulers show up, and you have a prearranged somewhere on a website or on an ARA or somewhere, you have a prearranged like, hey, I'm going to buy that fuel off you for X price. So you have purchase orders in, and then the guys show up and they're like, yep, sure enough, there it is. He's paying 30% above market value for the purpose of having it delivered to a location at a time. That could be cool. I mean, oh my God.
I could definitely see that being a thing where you said, hey, my fleet carrier is at this point landing in this system. There's an icy ring. I'm going to set up a buy order for 30%, 50% above market average. If you want to make some cash, well, bring a mining laser and come out here and refuel my carrier for me. Yeah.
There's going to be all kinds of emergent gameplay that come out of this that we're not even thinking about it right now. That it's like there's going to be things that come up that just people, because we haven't had it, people just haven't thought of it.
And I could actually see like a hybrid explorer mining kind of gameplay suddenly emerging, where you would have people who would just go from fleet carrier to fleet carrier out in the black to restock them. If there were a way to detect where they were, whether that is a third-party tool or if it's an in-game tool, for me it doesn't really matter. But as long as it's doable to detect easily where they are,
I could see very easily either the Elite Dangerous version of Craigslist or like an Anara subpage that has that, where it's like a want ads page for Elite Dangerous in Galaxy saying, "Hey, I want to hire." I want to hire mercenaries. So, hey, I want to buy this. Hey, I want to refuel X at Y location. Like, a lot of that can happen. So let's get into some of the terminology issues. Here are the two that I found that to me just make me nuts. They say paintworks. What the hell is a paintworks? It's a paint job, right? It's
I think.
Does it?
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
No. If you go around to all the different cell locations where you can buy carriers, basically, here they will have these showrooms outside, and they will all have mainly the front and the engines. I think front and the back looks different. And they have all kinds of fancy, flashy paint jobs and different the thrusters have different colors. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna see like thruster colors being a thing, paint jobs being a thing, and you cannot be able to replace the nose or the rear of the ship. Probably.
And if you notice, those are the models. Those are the models that they're repurposing that they've already had and shown us when we were supposed to get fleet carriers last year. That's exactly ships. What those are. That's one of those is the combat one. One of those is sort of the exploration looking one. Yeah. One of them is the hauling type one. And I guarantee you, we're going to get those when in June. That's going to be what you're going to have. Like, hey, do you want yours to look like this, and you click on it, and it's like, boom, there it is. It looks like that ship.
Yeah, it'll probably be expensive.
Yeah, but hey, you want it, have fun, knock yourself out, whatever.
Exactly.
But the fact that it says paintworks instead of paint jobs, when you go and you land on a ship and it says to repair your own paint job on your ship, it says paintworks. That makes me nuts. I don't know why.
I think it's just an oversight.
And the other one is they call it the secure warehouse. It's a black market, right?
Yes.
And it's a black market?
And they call it the redemption office, and it's an interstellar factor. But I don't know why they call it make it slightly different. It just adds confusion, I think.
Well, for interstellar faction, or factor / redemption officer, that I get, because it isn't an interstellar factor, and that you can't pay off fines there or anything. You can't pay off any legal fines
you
there.
can only sell bounty.
Yeah, so that makes you're redeeming things. So that makes sense to me.
Okay, fair enough.
But a secure warehouse is it is a player controlled black market. That's what it is. It's the black market. It's for buying and selling stolen goods.
Yeah.
That is not, it's close to the description of a black market. That's the exact description of a black market.
Yeah.
To the point that it was even, Obsidian Ant put out a video, his first thoughts on carriers or whatever when he saw it. And he was like, the secure warehouse, that seems way overpriced, but man, I want to get access to all that cargo storage. And it's like, that's not what they're talking about. And like, Obsidian Ant is not an idiot. He is a savvy, elite, dangerous consumer. So if even he is confused by this, it's a terminology that should be gotten rid of, I think.
Yeah, but again, these things are very, very easy to change. I mean,
Sure.
That will take minutes. I mean, sure, they will have to do some search and replace in the handbook, but the handbook is already out of sync as what's actually happening on the fleet carriers in some locations. So there will have to be an overhaul of at least either of them that need to be brought in sync. And I would probably assume that would be, if it were me running a project like this, that would be the last thing I did. It would be, I would just focus on tuning the actual carriers. And once I got those working and we got it validated that this is not working the way I wanted to, then I would go and update the documentation, aka the handbook, and make sure that was like actually reflected what was happening on the fleet carriers. So
100% agree.
That's probably going to come at some point.
So it seems like of the big things that we want changed, we seem to agree. We want a mechanism for being able to book multiple jumps and a mechanism for being able to have more control over how the fuel situation is handled.
Yeah.
We want some mechanism to address universal cartographics, whether it's the full universal cartographics or if they just refuse to allow that, a data core is a halfway step at least.
Yeah.
And then after, like, that seems to be it on the big things that we sort of really want changed.
Upkeep, right? But that's
well, no. So that's the medium part stuff, which is the upkeep thing is just switching dials. The fuel range is switching dials. So that
yes. Okay, you mean the thing that's going to take time for Frontier to
that's going to take. Great. I don't think upkeep cost is going to take. Like we both said, it's going to take time for them to sit down and really think it out and really sort of say
what the price is going to be. Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. Those prices don't even match the handbook. Those prices don't match what they showed us 5 days ago before the beta started.
No.
In their announcement video. I think those prices were hiked up on purpose just so that when they knew they were going to get a mountain of salt over anything to do with upkeep, now they're able to cut it down by 90% and everybody will be like, ta-da, we win.
And if they hadn't done it, then everybody would be, it needs to go all together.
Yes. I think if they had left it where it was, which was around about the 25 to 30 million for like a full, then people right now would be saying it needs to be lowered to 3 million.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It seems like they're new coking us, but like whatever. I have no oomph left in me to fight that fight. It is what it is. But so the big things that are going to take a lot of time is do something with cartographics, do something with booking your flights and you're handling your fuel.
Multi-jumps, basically.
The little things are fix the upkeep. I mean, it's big in the effect, but it's little in the amount of effort taken to fix it. Fix the upkeep costs, make them around 25 to 30 million for a fully loaded. And then I feel like we both agree you're happy if you can get around 20 million for a regular consumer if they, don't put it all.
Yeah.
I feel like there's I'm not asking for this to change, okay? I'm not asking for this to change, but I feel like it was a missed opportunity. I really, really, really would love to have seen them say the fuel for fleet carriers is scooped off of gas giants.
Yeah.
or the fuel for fleet carriers is mined off of the asteroid belts. To be clear, in case anyone's confused, I'm not talking about icy rings or rocky rings around planets. I mean those little, when you go pull up the system map, how you see that little strip of rocks just straight up and down that doesn't have a body?
Yeah.
Those two, gas giants and asteroid belts, are completely underutilized in the game, and it would have been cool to see something happen there.
Yeah, I agreed.
But, you know, whatever. And then the last sort of observation that I made to them is...
They haven't missed the opportunity yet. I mean, this thing is not launched, and there's still, at the very least, 2 months, and I would expect closer to 3 before we see this thing on the live server. 3 months of developing, a lot can happen.
But they've already sort of landed on Tritium and built a lot of different systems around it. I don't think that that's a dial that they're willing to move now. And there doesn't seem to be any real outcry for them to.
No. I would agree that Tritium will probably stay where it is. And to be honest, that's okay. The only downside with the way they've implemented Tritium is the fact that they have to regenerate all the hotspots, which means Baran is gonna die, and all the other double Painites hotspots are gonna go away. But again, for all the people out there who's been so worried about that oh no, the mining is gonna be completely nerfed, and I'm 100% that we're gonna find double hotspots again, I hope, and I'm almost certain we're going to find a triple hotspot. It may not be low temps. It may be it's Painite. That could be it. Yeah. And as soon as this thing hits and all the hotspots have been regenerated, you can be absolutely sure that I'm going to be out there and I'm going to be scanning rings and I'm going to be getting as many people with me as I can so we can find those hotspots, so we can get the cash flow rolling again.
Let me tell you something. Keep your eyes open to the Intergalactic Mining Union, the IMU. My friends over there are going to be on it like a sonnet. They're going to be scanning.
I wasn't expecting to be able to do this. I mean, if we want to do this effectively as a player community, there must be someone running it, and it might very well be those guys, because they probably have a very good system for how we're going to do it. And if I can just contact those guys and say, hey, can you give me 100 systems, and I will get me and as many people as I can, and we'll just begin scanning. I mean, need to organize it somehow, right? Rather than just having people flying randomly around.
I'm going to put you in touch with a couple of Dans. There's a couple of Dans over at I don't know why. There's a lot of Dans over at the Intergalactic Mining Union in their upper group, and we'll get something arranged, because I think if we're on it, you know, if we get the Loose Screws crew on it, if we get the Down to Earth crew, we get the Intergalactic Mining Union and the Burr Pit mining community, if we get all of us on it, we're going to crack that code quick.
Yeah. If we basically just divide the bubble into sectors, something like it could be based on coordinates, just make square cubes and say, you guys take that square cube, that's your responsibility to get that thing scanned.
And in the most hilarious turn of events ever, that's how Raxla was accidentally found.
As people suddenly began just combing through the bubble.
Hey guys, I found Raxla. Who cares? Does it have a triple low temperature diamond hotspot?
I think I read somebody was looking for that. Maybe you should write that down. But hey, let's go.
Did you see? I posted today because somebody found Raxla on their system map, and they pulled it up, and it was some guy had named his fleet carrier Raxla, but he showed up on the system map, and the guy was like, "Wait, what?"
That's good. But I like that.
Yeah, man. All right, so we got to say this before we leave this topic, because I don't want to scare the hell out of anybody who's like, but I'm working on getting my money for my fleet carrier. The triple diamond spot in Baran, what, A2A, it's going to still be there until June. It's not going away. It's just gone away on the beta. So between now and June, be a busy little beaver and get your stuff done. After that point, it's gone for like a week.
Take a 2-week break, and we'll find you a new one.
I don't even think a week. I think it's going to be, I don't even think 2 weeks. I think it's going to be a week. But it's going to be just for a little while. Things are going to change. And that's not because they're nerfing whatever. No, it's whenever, the way that they do the Stellar Forge system, they have a finite number of minerals and things in the galaxy. And whenever they add one to it, which they're doing here, they're adding tritium. it literally goes through and randomly generates all the stuff. So it just shuffles the Etch-a-Sketch. But it's gonna be fine. 2 weeks, they'll find a new one. You'll be good to go.
Yeah.
All right. So I feel like I want to hear I've done way too much talking. I want to hear 5 to 10 minutes of just Astro's thoughts. Go.
Okay, on the spot. Yeah, so I think, again, as Benny has pointed out, fleet carriers are, in their current state, very well suited for a mining community. And it can be useful for others if you can find a way to make them profitable. But I think the main purpose, or the main thing that needs to change with the fleet carriers, is there need to be many different ways to make it profitable, or at least to help the owner keep that thing running. I mean, yes, you could go in and you could set up buy orders at ridiculously low prices, and people go and sell you stuff for next to nothing, and you could help the owner generate some cash that way to keep it running. This wouldn't be so big of an issue if they just lowered the upkeep down, but I'm pretty sure that's going to happen at some point. But I would like to see more options than having to find some material, go and sell it to the market at underinflated or deflated prices. How exactly that, again, is difficult. I mean, they have the redemption office where the owner can get a tariff for it, so that kind of covers most of the combat stuff. But it would really be nice if the focus moved away from how am I going to keep this thing flying so it doesn't completely drain my wallet, to how am I going to make this work for the type of gameplay that I like. That is the discussion that I think is way more interesting than how am I going to make enough money to make this thing fly? Because I think that's going to, I hope, and I'm almost certain that is going to be fixed and going to be reduced. And I think until that is announced, only then will we begin to see a discussion that moves over to what I think is the more interesting topic, is how do we actually make the core gameplay with the fleet carriers usable for many different aspects of playing in the league. There's been a lot of talk around how you use it for mining. That makes sense. And there's been a lot of talk about how you use it for exploration, or as it is right now, do not use it for exploration. But I would really like to see that we also begin to look at it from a trading community's perspective, or for the Xeno combat guys, the Anti-Xeno Initiative, or all the other groups that does anti-Xeno stuff. What about BGS? I mean, it has some functionality for BGS. As things are right now, I'm not sure it's going to give enough of a benefit to BGS. And that's really a difficult one to balance, because you don't want to make fleet carriers hey, we're just going to jump this thing into your system and we're just going to completely mess up your BGS. You want it to still have an effect, I think, but it shouldn't be completely overpowering. So it's an instant I win button. So it's really, really difficult. And it's a very, very fine balance that they would have to try and make in order to make it useful. But getting the fleet carriers usable in a more general matter. I mean, just having a floating station that you control is already a very very interesting point, but there is some things that needs to change so that they are easier to keep flying, and they're easier to pay for, not the initial cost but the running costs. Whether that is increasing, I mean, they could also just increase the payout of other types of gameplay. I mean, everybody's been like, hey, yeah, if you're mining, they're easy to keep flying. But for people who do PvE and like to shoot NPCs in hash rest sites, well, even making the 30 million a week might actually be a significant amount of work. There are ways where you can make significant amount of money from PvE, but you would have to work quite a bit more for other types of gameplays in order to keep a fleet carrier afloat. So I would really like to see either them just outright boosting other types of gameplays for that, but that would be a lot more to ask for, I think, if they want to actually make changes to other parts of the game than just the fleet carrier. So would probably be better just to balance that out. Well, be honest.
Okay, so speaking of this whole process that you're talking about, as far as, you know, the changes and whatnot, a couple things to keep in mind. First, this beta is going on until April 20th. We have a good bit more time with the data. We literally have 11 more days.
Yeah.
Second, I would direct your attention to a post on the Frontier forums. Feedback changes announced next week. Today at 11:24 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. From Bruce Garrido, Community Manager. Greetings, Commanders. We'd like to take this chance to thank all of you who have already helped test fleet carriers in the beta. Your suggestions and feedback will be critical in ensuring they're the best possible version upon release. After the 2 days, we have received lots of feedback on various features and have been given a clear indication of which aspects are a priority. In response, we'll be making changes which will be listed in an announcement post next week. We hope you enjoy your weekend, parentheses, a long one for the UK-based commanders, exclamation point, parentheses, and continue to push fleet carriers to their limits, 07. So, where we're at is, next week, so 7 days from today, at the most, you're talking about the 16th, we're going to have sort of the first round of changes, hopefully even earlier. I would like to see it come Monday or Tuesday, and then have a patch that, okay, now test this. We've changed this, now tweak that, now whatever. What do you expect to see in that first round of changes?
So, as we already talked about, there are some changes that requires more time behind the scenes to change, and there are some that requires very little. And I think one of the obvious ones that they could do is, of course, lowering the upkeep. That's probably
100%.
That's not going to be the final one. I think they're maybe going to do it in incremental steps. So they're going to lower it a bit, and they're going to see what people think about it, and then maybe lower it up again. I think it's going to be a gradual process where they kind of try to dial it in where they both feel comfortable with it and where the player base feel comfortable with it. And I was briefly considering if they would just outright just add a service and enable cartography, because it seems like a pretty straightforward thing to do. Just enable an existing feature on a fleet carrier that already looks and smells a lot like a station. But what I'm afraid of is if they are not 100% certain that they want cartography on it, they wouldn't enable it. Because imagine this situation where they say, hey, we're going to try this beta to just put cartography on it, and then later
then you can never take it away.
You can never take that away from people again. If you then tell to people, oh, you know what, we actually didn't like that, we're going to take that away from you again. That's like giving a kid some candy and say, do you like that? Yeah, now I'm going to take it away from you again. The outcry would never stop.
I agree.
So therefore, I don't necessarily think, even though they might do it for launch, I don't necessarily think we're going to see stuff like cartography data on fleet carriers announced next week. I would be more positive if we were looking at the May beta, the beta 2,
100%.
because I think, cartography is such an obvious thing to put on there, and they left it out for a reason. And I think it's because they're not 100% sure whether they actually want that.
We don't know when the date of beta 2 is. We know they say they're aiming for May, but literally that could be May 20th. Or May 12th or May 15th, whatever. But if, let's say, I'm just going to pick a date out of thin air. Let's say it's May 20th. I'm just picking a date. Just if they say May 20th, that gives them, once they're done, right now they're actively collecting data and they're sort of trying to figure out a lot of things at once. This is data collection period. So I see them, I agree with you 100%. I see them more twiddling the dials on, upkeep costs. Let's make it here. Okay, too low. Okay, make it here, too high. Okay. But more likely they'll step it down, as you say, gradually so that they don't go too low. Because once you go too low, again, like we said, you're taking candy away from a kid, they get mad. They throw a tantrum. Yeah. But I see I think they're gonna change some of that. I think we might see, very realistically, we might see shipyard added to the included costs and player market made an optional cost. That's a thing I think we might see. But
that makes sense, yeah.
Between April 20th, when they're doing their data collection, and this is just a made up number. This is not an announcement. Let's say May 20th, they start the second beta. That gives them a full month to literally have a lot of meetings and sit around and argue the point and look at, well, man, everybody really feels strongly. Well, we don't like it because of this. And let's figure it out. That gives them a lot of time to figure it out before deciding if they want to include cartographics in the May beta. That's, I agree with you. It's much more likely then.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think, again, even with the upkeeps, I'm not expecting that if they make an announcement next week that they're going to say, we're going to cut it down to 10% of the current. We're not going to see that. They're going to take it in small steps. And maybe they're going to say, okay, let's try to halve it this time. And that would still be higher than I would be comfortable with, but we're getting closer. And then they're going to see, what are the feedback now? Are people kind of like saying, okay, they're accepting that a max price of 70 million a week for everything, which I still think is absurd, but they would try to kind of lower it gradually, step by step. And then if they still, which I would expect, is still going to get a lot of flack for the high upkeep prices after, let's say, they halved it, then in the May beta, then they're going to lower it even further until they reach a point where they both feel comfortable with it and the player base feel comfortable with it.
I think you and I will feel comfortable. Like I said, we've already covered when it hits that 25 to 30 cap range. I am afraid, I don't want to say afraid, but I have this gut feeling that there's so much of the player base that's being stirred by a certain faction that their answer is 0 or GTFO. And I feel like having an unreasonable number, saying 0 or GTFO, sort of puts Frontier in a position where it's kind of like, well, what's the point of trying to appease you then? We're just going to have it where it is and deal with it.
Yeah, but to be fair, I mean, as we discussed earlier, what they have done right now is what we expect. We don't know that for sure, but what we expect they've done now is they said, we're just going to give those numbers like an extra 0 for the beta. If that's what they've done, if they're playing that game where they're saying, we're just going to go and try to propose something outrageously high, then it wouldn't actually be out of place for the player community to go the other way and say, well, if you're going to want to have us to pay 140 something million a week to keep a fully functional fleet carrier, then we want it for free. Let's meet in the middle somewhere and let's take it from there.
No, I agree.
So, and yeah, you could begin to play the game like that and say, oh, we want it for free, and they would then. But to be honest, if we could just get it around there, we discussed about get it on the 25, 30. And I really hope, though, that Frontier would just go and say, okay, we're going to remove a 0. We're going to make it so that the max price is, let's say, the 25, 30 or whatever, 20, that area that we talked about. Because as I mentioned, that would suddenly move the discussion away from just being how expensive it is to actually begin to discuss, and people would actually begin to maybe go in and test other aspects of it, rather than just sit and look at those huge numbers and sit and think, how am I going to pay for this on the main server? Yeah, I think Frontier will end up like shooting themselves in the foot if they are not lowering the upkeep fast enough, if they take it too gradually. Because then that's going to be the only thing people are focusing on, and then we're going to end up with something that's going to be full of bugs that people don't discover once it's launched.
Agree.
So get it in. I would really hope. I mean, I still think they're going to do it step by step, but I hope they're going to do it relatively fast and then go down to, let's say they have a max price of 40 to 50 million in the next one, and then we're a little bit closer, and hopefully some of the discussion will move over to some of the other functionalities.
Yeah, I think if I had to guess, let's play Price is Right. All right, you pick the number. I say for this change that they're going to post next week, they're going to say total upkeep cost right now is 147 million a week. I think they're going to say 50. What do you think?
I was about to say 50, but in Jun's stuff playing with the Price is Right, I'm going to say 45.
No. You're supposed to say 49,999, right? That's Price is Right.
That's right. You just go one under. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But okay. So I think they're going to say 50 next week, and then I think that for May beta they're going to come around to 30, and I think that's a good number to stick at.
Yeah.
If you had to pick one, and I know this is dumb, but lightning round. If you had to pick one, add UC, or add the ability to plan multi-jumps and the storage, your fuel storage issue. Pick one.
UC.
Agreed.
Because if you might have the multi-jump, which is really useful for explorers, but if they don't have a cartography that can't sell their data, it doesn't matter. They're not going to take it out there anyway. So
agreed.
UC, definitely.
One is it breaks an entire use case, and the other is just an annoying inconvenience.
Exactly.
And annoying inconveniences are not unheard of in games.
No.
We get around a lot.
Yes,
All
exactly.
Right. All right. Well, Astro, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks a lot for having me.
I love, for those people out there right now that are like, I'm so sick of Elite. Every time I pull up any video of anything, it's people that are just complaining and salt. Let me tell you something. Look into the stuff that we're doing at Loose Screws. Look into the stuff that Down to Earth Astronomy is putting out. Look into the stuff that the Burr Pit is putting out. There's a lot of salt coming from everywhere. But when I go to Down to Earth Astronomy stream, when I go to the Burr Pit stream or a video, I'm knowing up front, I'm going to get, oh, that's weird. I wonder why they chose that. Let's try to figure it out. Let's think it through. And then in the end, you're going to get criticisms. It's not like Pollyanna. It's not like, oh, we're frontier nut huggers. You're going to get us going, that doesn't make sense. I hope they fix that. But what you're not going to get is an hour long, you suck. This is the worst game ever. I'm going to go play year 19 of the alpha for Star Citizen because it's way better. Like, no, we're going to look at, I am unashamed to say I love Frontier Development and Elite Dangerous. I think you are the same. I think Burr is the same. We're going to call him out when something doesn't make sense, but we're going to do it constructively and not just moan and groan for all day.
Yeah, absolutely. As I've also mentioned before, I don't mind giving Frontier flack when they do something where I just think this is just outrageously stupid. But I will also sing their praises when they do something I think is really great. Fleet carriers, there's definitely some things that are outrageously stupid, but they've also done a lot of stuff that is really, really great.
Yeah. I feel like fleet carriers are a really, really great product that has a stupid price tag and a couple of things that need to be turned on. But
yeah.
That's making a really, really great product is 99.99999% of the work. Fixing the price tag and then flipping on a couple of switches to say like, we could totally make it do that. Flip the switch. You're so close to the finish line. It's really, really good. We just need to get it the rest of the way.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, my friend. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome.
Okay. So I hope you enjoyed that. I know I did. And now to play us out, let's throw it out back to the miners out there in Baran. Get that money. This is Commander Toko So with Mining on My Own. See you next week.
You come so far, and now you're in my own backyard. And I've been minding on my own business, mining all the stones I can't see. It all revolves around me. You turned the fool. Before you even scanned me, I knew. 'Cause I've been minding on my own business, mining all the stones I can see. But now you've come for me. Put away your guns, put away your threats and your taunts, they don't mean that much to me. Put away my boy, don't come here no more, or you'll find out there's much more to me. Would quickly drop the pain, I'd and fly. But I got something in my heart for you, something that you might wanna see. I'll set the baby free, oh, don't be fooled. This top 10 ain't no big heavy mule. Oh, it's been engineered to death for you. Hope you'll be impressed as your shields fall to hell, boy. Put away your guns, put away your threats and your taunts, they don't mean